Looking back at it, I wish I could have gone, but it was in those moments that as I was reflecting on everything, I was angry, I was upset. She was close to retirement. Why couldn't there have been something or someone to save her? I started doing my own research into mental health care access in the military community. And the more I delved in, I saw that there was so many disparities into access, whether it's from TRICARE or what services do accept TRICARE. And then even being allowed to go when you're in the middle of like shift schedule and just trying to make it to deployment and all these things. So it mainly stemmed from her loss. And from there, the more I learned, the more I wanted to do more and raise awareness to these disparities.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast for military and veterans. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, and provide value and solutions to help make life more abundant.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Katherine Martinez. She is a field advocate for mental health care access and improving suicide prevention efforts. She has served as a walk chair for the Out of the Darkness Walk for Virginia Beach for 3 years for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, a host for International Survivals of Suicide Loss Day, a crisis counselor with Crisis Text Line, as well as Safe Talk and Assist trainer. Her efforts stem from the loss of her mentor, STGCS Sue Eisinger, in 2017. Since then, she's committed her time to advocating for accessible mental health care for those in the military-affiliated community. She believes one way we can improve these efforts is having honest conversations about mental health and bringing attention to organizations that provide accessible care for veterans, active duty service members, reservists, and their families. Katherine, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Rachel. I'm really excited to be here and have a conversation about mental health.
Yeah, so as we wrap up National Suicide Prevention Week, I just wanted to have this open conversation about suicide prevention, talk a little bit about resources for people that may not know where some resources lie, and then just kind of talk about a few other things surrounding suicide prevention. So I wanted to start by diving a little bit deeper into why you are so passionate about mental health and suicide prevention.
So my reason for getting so involved stemmed from losing my mentor in 2017. I had just left A school, got to my first command, which was DG 81, the Winston S. Churchill. It just so happened to be my mentor's last ship before she had transferred to be a detailer in Millington. And she was one of the first people in the Navy who had the utmost faith and confidence in me that I was going to make a difference in the world. And she didn't know how, but she's just like, I just get that energy from you. And I was really excited because when I got my order, she's like, that's a really good ship. I just came from there. So I'm like hyped, I'm pumped, and I get there. And within the first 2 weeks of me getting there, I find out that she has taken her own life. She was about to retire. So she was very close to ending her career. And it devastated me. And following her loss, I took it pretty hard. A lot of people knew her. The Sonar Tech community is pretty small. And people from all over the world came to her remembrance in Naval Station Norfolk. And I remember that day where my division came upstairs. Well, not upstairs, but we were on the ship. They came up to Sonar 1. And they're like, hey, Martinez, we're getting ready to go. Are you sure you don't want to go? I was heartbroken and devastated. I did not want to go. I was in those grieving staging processes, right? And I'm like angry. And I was like, no, I don't want to go because I'm upset. And they're like, are you sure it's your last chance? You know, your blues are like in birthing, you know, you just put them on real quick. And I was insistent. I was like, I am not going. And they're like, okay, that's on you. You know, like we're here. Like we can talk about it later. I'm like, okay. And I remember them dogging the door down to Sonar 1. And as soon as the door was dogged all the way down, I started crying my eyes out. Looking back at it, I wish I could have gone, but it was in those moments that as I was reflecting on everything, I was angry, I was upset. She was close to retirement. Why couldn't there have been something or someone to save her? I started doing my own research into mental health care access in the military community, not only for senior enlisted, but junior enlisted. And the more I delved in, I saw that there was so many disparities into access, whether it's from TRICARE or what services do accept TRICARE. And then even being allowed to go when you're in the middle of like shift schedule and just trying to make it to deployment and all these things. So it mainly stemmed from her loss. And from there, the more I learned, the more I wanted to do more and raise awareness to these disparities, but also bridge the gap between accessibility, because there are mental health resources, but it's equally as important to have them be accessible, especially to underrepresented minority groups like persons of color and people in the LGBTQ plus communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that something that's come up a lot lately out of the numerous Facebook groups that I'm part of that are military affiliated is a lot of people are wanting access to mental health care, but they feel like either the wait is too long or they're not comfortable going to see a mental health professional on a military base. And so I wanted to just have a little bit of a chat about resources, not only for these people that maybe want to see someone outside of a military base. Actually, let's start our chat there. Let's talk about these resources for people that want to see someone outside of a military base, but a lot of these people are looking for free or affordable care because, yes, we understand that TRICARE is covering mental health care, but a lot of times we hear that TRICARE only wants to cover people on base, or maybe that's not true. Maybe there is an easier way for people to get seen off of base that people just don't know about. So I wanted to chat about any resources you know of for people like that.
So there are a few resources to go about it. Military One Source does have a confidential line that can bridge the gap of reaching accessible resources. For Navy, there's also Fleet and Family Support Center that do have readily available counselors. Another favorite of mine is Vet for Warriors. They're actually based out of Texas, and they connect you with other fellow veterans. And then there's a new app from TRICARE. It's called Doctor on Demand, and pretty much it's accessible 24/7. And you can say, hey, I'm just looking for someone to talk to. And then somebody will connect with you via that app to talk to a mental health professional and then guide you through the steps of accessing additional care.
And so then there's also this other side to the story where people aren't immediately suicidal, but they know that if they wait 30 days or however long it may take to get into some of these appointments, that's not going to be enough time. And I've been in this position before myself. And it's a really difficult position to be in because you don't want to walk into mental health and be like, hey, I'm suicidal when you're not, because sometimes they'll take that extra step and try to, get you somewhere safe when you don't necessarily need that right now. I know support looks a little different for everyone in a mental health crisis. Just because you're depressed or going through something does not mean that you have to be hauled off to the emergency room right away. And so it creates this kind of difficult dynamic for a lot of service members. I know that Given Hour, it's a resource that I've used personally before that is great for service members that want to talk to a therapist not affiliated with the military. And I know there's a number of apps. I think Doctor on Demand is an app, if I remember right. But BetterHelp, I've heard, is an app. I've never used it, so I can't vouch for it. Is there anything else that you know of that is maybe non-military affiliated that these veterans, active duty and reservists can use to talk to someone?
So you have your national hotline, your Veterans Crisis Line, by dialing 988 and press option 1. That is a hotline, but I want to distinguish what a hotline is versus a warm line. A hotline might be someone who might be at imminent risk. Imminent risk means you are actively thinking of suicidal ideation. Throughout your talking to a crisis counselor, you may or may not be at imminent risk and need emergency services. But Vets for Warriors is a warm line, and a warm line is when you're not quite feeling at your imminent risk or have a active suicide plan in mind, but want to talk to somebody. And Vets for Warriors does a really good job of being there when you need someone to talk to. I've known several people to use it and feel comfortable using it because they're veterans. It's not connected or supported by a DoD organization at all. It is a research based out of a research institution, if I'm remembering correctly. but they are accessible 24/7, and you can be connected with a male or female, and you can let them know upon initial contact if you would prefer speaking to a male or female, which I know can alleviate a lot of pressures as an initial touch base when talking about your mental health.
So then kind of the what I wanted to wrap this up with is talking about this major stigma when it comes to suicide, when it comes to talking about suicide. I know in Assist, this is something that we talk a lot about, is talking about suicide and how to approach people. So many people are uncomfortable with these conversations. And I think that's what leads to that culture when it comes to being really weird about mental health and talking about these things. What are some tips that you can give the listeners today when it comes to talking about suicide and when it comes to creating a better culture surrounding mental health?
I think one of the biggest ways we can alleviate the stigma is realizing that your warning signs, and I'm not sure if they can see my quotes or not, but I'm holding air quotes up behind warning signs because what are expressed as warning signs in the media is not going to be the same for everybody else. Everybody carries a different demeanor. What might be a warning sign to me may not be a warning sign to you. Somebody who's immediately outgoing, maybe they are appearing a little bit more withdrawn, and that's when you would touch base and ask how they're doing. And similar to someone who might not be as outgoing, but are suddenly have this burst of energy, you want to touch base with them because that's outside of their normal activity. And that's what I feel like would lessen the stigmas is if we look at people as individuals rather than trying to find these blankets like, oh, this person is exhibiting XYZ, they must be suicidal. It's getting to know the people around you that you see every day, especially in a working environment. You know what they're like. You ask, hey, how was your weekend? Like, oh, what do you have planned after work? And recognizing these patterns within our individuals and around us, that's what's going to make people be more open-minded. And if you're in a position of leadership, having that open door policy. And then beyond that, it's having accessible resources posted in your office place or place of work or somewhere someone can easily see it, or just having them in like your phone book and you can like just airdrop it or send it to them via text message if it's a note, because sometimes we don't want to have an honest conversation about it. But having those resources, somebody might be like, okay, like I don't want to talk to them, but here's a resource that I could reach out to, and having diversity within those resources makes it a little bit easier as well. Because what might not work with one resource, another resource may be better equipped to assist you better.
I love that. And I like to use myself as an example when we talk about looking at changing the people's change in demeanor. When I got to my last squadron that I was in the Navy, I was very, very excited, happy to be there. I wanted to learn. I wanted to go on detachments, and noticing my own pattern as I started to decline and not care. Instead of leadership reaching out and being like, hey, are you okay? Is there some way we could support you? What happened? It was, oh, you're a piece of shit. We're not going to help you with anything now, in hopes that makes it better. And I saw this pattern happen to a lot of people. I see it all the time throughout the Navy, is that when people start to decline, when people start to exhibit out of the norm behavior, people react instead of being proactive and getting to know them and understanding that this is a change in who they usually are. And we just automatically give them this mark of you're a bad sailor, or, you're a bad Marine, or whatever service they're in. So I think it's important to always go back to this idea of get to know your people, understand when something looks a little bit different. And, always having these genuine conversations with people about how they're doing and how life is, and if there's any way that they could be supported.
So I'm really grateful that you are able to share your own experience and resonate with. Once I started feeling outside of the normatives of being well, people withdrew. People didn't care about my well-being. They cared about, was I able to complete the job as a service member? And that's the norm for so many people. We're so focused on the mission that a lot of times we forget about people. A lot of people, this is their first time with real world experiences. They're losing loved ones for the first time. They're going through divorce or other hardships and aren't sure on how to navigate these things. So I so heavily enforce, get to know your people. We are at work more times than we're home when we're active duty. And when we're reintegrating as veterans, we're still learning how to assimilate back into society after being a service member 24/7. So getting used to talking about how we're feeling or how we're doing or how we feel towards a certain subject really make all of the difference.
Yeah. When it comes to the culture in the military, I think that that's one of the most important aspects in suicide prevention. And that's because we know that it takes years to integrate different programs as far as better mental health care. It takes money, it takes budgeting, it takes the right people. And realistically speaking, it probably is going to take years for the organization of the DoD to recognize and start providing better support for the entire organization. But things that we can do now and things we can do today to make things better is we can be better people. We can be understanding. We can kind of let go of that military tough guy facade that I think has ran the military for so many years and understand that there's a time and a place for it, but we're still people at the end of the day. And if we don't have the people, you don't get the mission done. So I love the points that you brought up. I appreciate you taking the time to share some resources with us here today. Real quickly, I wanted you to chat about the event that you do at coffee shops every year because I love it. And I'm actually looking at trying to implement something on the West Coast and with the island where I'm at, similar. But could you just chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really happy to talk about it. So what Rachel's talking about is Bring a Buddy. Bring a Buddy is an event I designed by relating it to the concept of let's catch up over a cup of coffee, let's catch up over a beer, but turning it into an opportunity to catch up about mental health conversations. Like when you're at work, for example, you can be walking across the hall and someone's like, oh, hey, good morning, how are you? And you're in pass and you're like, oh, good, how are you? And they're like, okay, great, thanks, you have a good rest of your day. And you just walk past each other and that's pretty much it. And so Bring a Buddy like reinforces the idea to have a sit down conversation. When you ask, how are you? It's how are you? How have you been? And you get to have that honest conversation. And then while you're having this conversation on the outside, we have accessible resources. So this past weekend on Sunday, we went to Pale Horse Coffee, which is a veteran-owned business in Chesapeake, Virginia. And they allowed us to welcome local organizations that provide mental health services. So we had a representative from the Hampton VA Hospital. She is a suicide case manager at the Hampton VA. So when you reach out to the Veterans Crisis Line, when you ask for a follow-up, those are one of the people that you are followed up with, and they help come up with a management plan for you, as well as the resources that you may need additionally or any services that you might need. And we also had Trails of Purpose, which is a local nonprofit organization in Chesapeake, Virginia, that help provide equestrian therapy for free for veterans, as well as military affiliated persons. And I think it's a really great opportunity to have events like Bring a Buddy because it normalizes these conversations of catching up. And as we normalize these conversations, it's going to overall encourage people to reach out for help. And with the reach out for help, it's going to increase the demand for accessible resources. And then, over time, hopefully, we're at a place in our society where we have enough people to not only get the services that they need, whether it's through therapy, psychiatry, et cetera. We are able to say like, oh, you can go to X, Y, and Z rather than have that delayed hesitancy and being like, it's a 12 to 16 week wait. It's an over 30-day wait. They'll be readily available when you need them to be.
And you also have a list of resources on your LinkedIn page that I'm happy to link in the show notes below for anyone that wants to check it out. Katherine is always updating that list, and I love to use it as a resource myself to share with people. You don't find things like that on the internet very often. So I'm very grateful for you in the advocacy and the work that you are doing over on the East Coast. I'm going to continue doing my thing on the West Coast, and hopefully we can make a huge difference here in the military and in the culture and society. And I look forward to seeing the work that you continue to do, Katherine. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I want to remind everyone that's listening, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to reach out for help.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in today. Each week, I'll be bringing you value in the mental health space and its direct impact on service members and veterans. If you feel you personally got value today from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star rating and review and share this to your audience. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.